Morning. This is Friday, October 6th, and I'm Kathleen Sullivan.
I'm Harry Smith. Welcome to CBS This Morning.
Morning once again, everyone. Harry.
Good morning.
120 years in jail and $5 million in fines. That's the maximum that Jim Bakker faces when he's sentenced later this month on 24 counts of fraud and conspiracy. This morning, Jim Bakker, the PTL, the whole question of television of religion. We're going to be talking with members of the jury, the federal prosecutor in the case, and Pat Robertson and the Reverend Robert Schuller will be joining us later on this morning. And also in this half hour, we're going to meet the Dalai Llama of Tibet, this year's winner of the Nobel Peace Prize.
And a little bit later on this morning, we're going to be talking baseball, in case you missed it. Mark Grace. Not too bad.
You missed the first inning. Can you imagine how awful your life would be?
It was quite a game last night. The Cubs even their playoff series with the Giants last night, winning 9-5, and we're going to talk about the playoffs with Brent Musburger of CBS Sports. And we're going to bring you up to date on what's happening with Julian Lennon and his music. Plus Friday, at home with designer Arnold Scaasi. Now, Charles Osgood has this morning's news. Good morning, Charlie.
Good morning, Harry, Kathleen. Good morning, everybody. In Panama this morning, the Noriega crackdown has begun. Following Tuesday's unsuccessful military coup, General Noriega said he would get tough with his political opponents. Well, last night he gave them a taste of what may be coming. Doug Tennell has the story.
Panamanian soldiers staged a late-night raid on the headquarters of opposition leader Guillermo Endara. CBS newsman Scott Wallace reached the offices while the raid was in progress.
We got close enough to see that they had broken into the opposition headquarters, and there were soldiers moving around inside.
Sporadic gunfire had continued for most of Thursday afternoon and evening outside Endara's offices. The gunmen were said to be plainclothes policemen, apparently intent on preventing Endara's supporters from gathering a crowd. The most popular figure in the opposition had only just emerged from hiding and is staging a hunger strike to protest Noriega's rule. The trouble at Endara's headquarters was just the kind of incident that Manuel Noriega told a group of supporters would probably occur more often in the days ahead. These are times of war, he said. Panama can no longer guarantee the opposition's democratic rights. Noriega has tried to minimize the seriousness of the coup attempt in public statements, but there is substantial evidence the plotters had far greater support within the armed forces than the regime admits.
The feeling is right now in Panama is that the dissension goes from the top to the bottom.
While the opposition did not support the coup attempt, opposition leaders are playing up the divisions within the armed forces at every turn. But Noriega appears intent on keeping the opposition on the run, and Noriega is still very much in control of the streets. Doug Tennell, CBS News, Panama.
Some White House officials are quoted this morning as saying the administration team performed badly during the Panama coup. The New York Times also quotes officials as saying the American military played a bigger role than previously acknowledged. Chief of Staff John Sununu is said to have ordered a study of how the coup was handled or mishandled. Mikhail Gorbachev is in East Berlin this morning, ready for some political tightrope walking, as East Germany's hardline communists celebrate 40 years in power. Barry Peterson is traveling with Gorbachev.
Mikhail Gorbachev arrived with a smile for this troubled land, his popularity here evident. A carefully prim and proper East German leader, Erich Honecker, was at the airport with a carefully picked crowd for a warm welcome, one socialist ally to another. Gorbachev is here as the honored guest as East Germany celebrates 40 years of socialist rule, here to give a stamp of communist fellowship and unity. Go, go, Gorbachev said, work, and the crowd responded for one brief moment as it chanted, Gorby, Gorby. Meanwhile, the finishing touches are being done for parades and processions, even as thousands are fleeing to the west. Barry Peterson, CBS News, East Berlin.
Another 600 East German refugees reached the west this morning by train from Poland, where they had occupied Bonn's embassy in Warsaw. As Martha Teichner reports, thousands who preceded them from Czechoslovakia are already spreading out across West Germany.
When they finally reached their destinations, the refugees were greeted by a chorus of clapping as they stepped from their trains. The first train went to Arveiler, near Bonn. Hundreds of townspeople waited to welcome them. They made their way to the relocation camps where they will start building new lives, running a gauntlet of goodwill. Strangers embraced strangers. All the emotions they had suppressed throughout their long ordeal getting to the West finally spilled out. West Germany was expecting 11,000 to 12,000 East Germans to arrive from Prague, but only 7,600 came. Processing began immediately at their camps. As soon as they were assigned beds, the refugees found themselves in line to register for Social Security, employment, relocation benefits. Then another line for a copy of the Constitution and national anthem. Most are skilled blue-collar workers who will have no trouble getting the kinds of jobs employers can't find West Germans to fill. But the newcomers from the East are known as ambitious overachievers who will not be entirely welcomed in a labor force where they will rock the boat. Most of all, they need housing, scarce and expensive here. Adjustment to the West may be more difficult than the refugees let on in their first excited calls to the relatives they left behind. For now, all that matters is that they are in the West, not the East. Martha Teichner, CBS News, Bonn, West Germany.
In this country, 9 people were killed during the night by a fire in a nursing home in Norfolk, Virginia. More than 60 residents were injured and remain hospitalized this morning. Firefighters using ladders carried some of the bedridden patients to safety as anxious relatives waited outside. Investigators are trying to determine the cause of the fire. Jim Bakker is free this morning on a $250,000 bond. As Bakker left a Charlotte courthouse yesterday, he maintained his innocence even though a jury needed just 11 hours to convict him of fraud and conspiracy. Tammy Bakker said the guilty verdict had not shaken their faith in God. Bakker's lawyers are now working on an appeal. New York developer Donald Trump is offering $7.5 billion for AMR Corporation, which is the parent of American Airlines. Trump already operates the Trump Shuttle, but this deal could net him the nation's largest airline. AMR is reviewing the offer, but the company says shareholders would be better off without Trump in charge. Trump's bid for American drove all the transport stocks higher yesterday and helped push Wall Street to its 3rd record high in 3 days. At the bell, the Dow Industrials were up almost 2.5 points to well above 2773. Tokyo stocks were lower this morning. In European trading, the dollar is higher. In London, gold is up 30 cents to $363.70 an ounce, and silver is unchanged at $5.16 an ounce. In the National League playoffs, the Cubs and the Giants are now tied at 1 game apiece. Last night in Chicago, the Cubs knocked out veteran Rick Russell in the first inning, led off by Jerome Walton's first pitch single, followed by Ryne Sandberg, Mark Grace, Luis Salazar, and Sean Dunston. In all, 6 runs for the Cubs in the first inning, and they went on from there to avenge their first game loss, 9-5. Stay tuned. Harry and Kathleen.
Thanks very much, Charlie. There's hope.
You know when the Giants hit a ball out, home run out into the bleachers, and they always throw one back? They didn't throw one back last night, you Cubby fans. What's the matter? You think Kevin Mitchell's going in the Hall of Fame and you want that ball? Isn't that interesting?
It is. Mark is out and about this morning. He is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida this morning. Nice shirt, Mark.
That looks like Hawaii, Mark. You're in
it does look like Hawaii. We'll talk about Hawaii in just a second. International Swimming Hall of Fame. I'm down here with Samuel Fries, Sam to his friends. He's the executive director of the Hall of Fame. I'm also down here for the International Outboard Grand Prix. Run the VCRs at 7:30. I'm going to be a boat. You're not going to believe this. What is the relationship between the International Outboard Grand Prix and the International Swimming Hall of Fame?
We're the beneficiary of the proceeds.
That's great. And also, you've got all kinds of things down here, including Johnny Weissmuller's gold medals from the 1924 Olympics.
We preserve the historical perspective of the aquatic sports.
I want to show you something. You've heard about a Duke who's an actor. Let's go over here. This is a Duke who is a swimmer. Tell us the name of Duke, and also there's Johnny Weissmuller to his right.
It's Duke Kahanamoku.
And he had a very unique swimming style that he brought, first person to swim in that style. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. The Hawaiian chain gave us, through Duke Kahanamoku, the flutter kick to the freestyle, so he propelled himself much higher above the water than most swimmers.
And the guy who was the next legend to come along was Johnny Weissmuller, a gentleman who never lost a race in his career.
Absolutely. Isn't it remarkable? 25 years, never lost a race, and of course, became Tarzan.
Now, there was a funny story. He didn't audition for Tarzan.
Absolutely. Cyril Hume, a novelist, found him and said, "What a body," and asked him to go and just have people take a look at him, and he didn't think he got the job, and sure enough, He became our Tarzan, and then Tarzan started swimming a whole bunch.
And they didn't even know he could swim.
Absolutely.
Well, I've got some weather to do. Don't go away. I also can do a 1.5 flip, by the way. I did it at the Fort Meade Pool in Maryland. We're going to talk about that in a second. Look for clouds and a few showers across eastern New England, while another sunny and warm day is on tap in the southeast and Florida. High here will be about 90 degrees. Thunderstorms and rain will fall from central Texas into Kentucky. Chilly temperatures will be felt in the upper Midwest. Out west, a mostly sunny day is on tap, with the exception of clouds over sections of Wyoming and Montana. That's a quick look at the national forecast and a great Hawaiian shirt. Let's take a look at your weather.
Good morning. I'm News 7 meteorologist Todd Gross. Today, rain for the early part of the day, clearing later this afternoon, and highs then approaching 70. Tonight will be mild. Tomorrow, though, it will turn a little cooler, about 60 degrees with partly sunny skies.
Sam, I want to thank you for being part of our show.
Well, thank you very much.
You have a shirt for me?
I certainly do. And that's for the double somersault at the Fort Meade Pool, and those inward somersaults. You're quite a diver and a wonderful person.
Thank you very much. Now back to New York.
He's a terrific diver. Thanks, Mark. Jim Bakker says that he will appeal his convictions on 24 counts of fraud and conspiracy. In just a moment, we're going to talk with two of the members of the jury that convicted him. But first, Deborah Smith was a federal prosecutor in the case. She joins us live this morning from the federal courthouse in Charlotte, North Carolina. Good morning, Miss Smith.
Good morning.
Did you expect him to be found guilty on all 24?
Well, you can never presume to know what a jury will do. We certainly anticipated that based on the strength of the evidence, but as I say, I would never presume to know what a jury will do with the evidence presented to them.
What count did you find the most difficult to prosecute?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
What count did you find, what charge did you find it most difficult to prosecute?
Well, actually, the entire case was a very straightforward fraud charge. Mr. Bakker was charged with promising people vacations each year for life and then simply not building the buildings that would house them, and instead using the money to provide a very lavish lifestyle for he and his family. I don't think any one charge stood out from any of the others.
What's the significance, do you think, of the verdict?
Well, the message the verdict sends is you cannot lie to people on TV in order to get them to send you money. And it doesn't matter who you are or how well known you are, you simply cannot do that to the American public.
Or is the message also the bigger you are, the harder you fall?
As I say, other than the fact that Mr. Bakker is a very high-profile person, this fraud case was very straightforward. He promised people things on television at a time when he knew he could not deliver, and the jury's verdict yesterday was the obvious outcome of that.
I gather that you expect an appeal?
Mr. Bakker's attorneys have announced one.
And so you're preparing for that?
Well, I really shouldn't comment any further on matters that could be coming up, like sentencing will be coming up, sentencing and any possible appeal.
Around the courthouse, is it true that the judge is called Maximum Bob?
The newspapers have reported that. I haven't heard it otherwise.
You've never heard it around your office? That this is
No.
one of the toughest judges around?
No, I think he's a very fair judge. I think he does give sentences that are appropriate.
Bakker's maid said yesterday that Jim Bakker has really no remorse, in fact, that he still loves the prosecutors. Do you have any sympathy for this man after watching him for 6 weeks?
Oh, certainly. I don't think any conviction is a cause for celebration at all. I think it's very sad for his family, very sad for him. I think it's saddest that the prosecution was even necessary. And I suppose the saddest factor, the 158,000 people across the country who were defrauded, many of them of their life savings.
Deborah Smith, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
And now joining us from Charlotte, two members of the jury that convicted Jim Bakker, the foreman of the jury, Rick Hill, and Gwendolyn Morris. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
I know you've had a tough 24 hours with all the questioning back and forth.
We sure have.
Mr. Hill, what do you think the significance of the case was?
Well, I reckon that I reckon it sends out a message to that I don't care who you are, you can not fraud people. Even you cannot stand behind religion to fraud people.
Do you feel that Jim Bakker and the charges now leveled, the charges that he's now found guilty on, will permanently hurt evangelism and television evangelism?
No, I don't think so. I myself am a Christian, and I don't think that it will hurt evangelism in a whole. I think it will make the people that elicit funds over the television look and make sure that they're doing it in the correct way.
Ms. Morrison, did you find this case easy to review as a member of the jury, or was there one charge that kind of stupefied you all?
One charge, and it was difficult.
What was it?
The time. I mean, it was a long, long trial, 25 days. That's a long time. And there was one charge that we got hung up on, which was count 1. What was it?
That was
July 4th, 1984.
And what specifically was that?
Male fraud.
Why was that difficult for you? Do you remember?
We had a hard time convincing one of the jurors that he had defrauded on or before July 4th, 1984.
25,000. That was on July 4th. Is when they went over that level. On July 4th, 1984.
Mr. Hill, I understand that a lot of you really on this jury were Christian. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, I think most of us was.
And Ms. Morrison, was that very difficult for you because all of you were somewhat remorseful?
No, I don't think so.
All right. Gwendolyn Morrison and Ricky Hill, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's now 16 after the hour. We'll be back.
The Dalai Lama of Tibet is the winner of this year's Nobel Prize for Peace, and Chinese officials don't like the choice. They say the decision is an attempt to interfere in Chinese affairs. The prize goes to the Dalai Lama for rejecting violence and trying to free Tibet from Chinese rule. At the age of 5, Tenzin Gyatso was enthroned as the Dalai Lama, the living Buddha, the 14th reincarnation of the spirit of compassion. For the 30 years of Chinese occupation of Tibet, he has been living in exile. More than 1 million of his people have died under Chinese suppression. Yet the Dalai Lama has sought a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Last night, the Dalai Lama spoke with me from Los Angeles. First, congratulations to you, sir.
Thank you.
What does this mean to you, and what does this mean to the people of Tibet?
I feel, to me, I feel this is some kind of, how to say, recognition that last 30 years or so, I try my best, how to say, to solve problem through human understanding on the basis of compassion and love. So I feel now this is something, some kind of formal recognition. This I feel. So I feel this is some encouragement, of course.
Do you think that by your getting the Peace Prize, more people around the world will understand the very difficult circumstances under which your people live?
I think, in a certain extent, I think so. This, of course, to say, gives some, how to say, some new interest. What is the Dalai Lama? What is to say? What happened in his country? That kind of, you see, question, naturally, you see, develop. So as a result, I think more awareness may come.
That's a very good point you bring up. I think many Westerns are very curious. Who is Dalai Lama?
Yes. But usually some people ask me, they use, say, the word God King. And I always say, telling people that there's something wrong. Usually I myself, my own definition, usually I say, I'm a just Buddhist monk.
The Chinese are very angry that this Buddhist monk has received the Peace Prize. What is your message to the Chinese?
That's difficult. difficult to say. I think, as a Buddhist, I always practice, patience. And through patience, you gain certain inner strength. So I think to the Chinese government, I think maybe it's worthwhile to expand more patience, more tolerance, more understanding. This I feel.
Is that your message not only for the government of China, but your message for the world as well?
Actually, I think in recent years, despite many problems, tricky problems, generally speaking, the whole global tendency, it seems now the right direction. Comparatively, I think more positive signs. So this is how I feel.
Dalai Lama, we do thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan.
The baseball playoffs headed to Game 3, with the National League Series tied up and Oakland dominating in the American League so far. In just a few minutes, we're going to talk with Brent Musburger, who is broadcasting the games on CBS Radio. That's how I listened to the Orioles-Toronto game last Saturday afternoon, about what to expect as the games continue. And also this half hour, people who make only minor adjustments in what they eat and how active they are can actually make a dramatic improvement in their blood pressure. Dr. Bob Arnott is going to tell us all about it.
A lot of people in San Francisco have high blood pressure after last night. Plus, Julian Lennon's going to be joining us. He has a new album, actually his third, and his singing style is becoming more and more his own. Later this morning, Dionne Warwick joins us to talk about this weekend's march in Washington, D.C. for the homeless. Now the news. Here's Faith Daniels. Faith.
Good morning, Kathleen. Hello, everyone. Leading our news this half hour, a Panamanian opposition leader escaped from a Noriega raid last night. Manuel Noriega's plainclothes police surrounded opposition headquarters yesterday, trapping former presidential candidate Guillermo Endara inside. Sporadic gunfire continued for hours. Then, after the cameras left, soldiers stormed the building. But Endara had apparently gotten away safely. CBS newsman Scott Wallace arrived on the scene shortly after the trouble started.
Where we got close enough to see that they had broken into the opposition headquarters and there were soldiers moving around inside.
Noriega says he has evidence that the United States planned Tuesday's coup to install Endara as president. This morning's New York Times quotes White House officials as saying the Bush administration's team mishandled the coup, and it's reported that U.S. troops played a far greater role in the uprising than previously admitted. Chief of Staff John Sununu is said to have ordered a White House investigation. In Jerusalem, Israeli cabinet ministers led by Prime Minister Shamir have rejected proposals for talks with a Palestinian delegation in Cairo. The cabinet vote was a tie, but the rules say a tie vote means cabinet rejection of the plan to open talks. Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev arrived today in East Berlin for a two-day visit marking East Germany's 40th anniversary. Gorbachev was greeted warmly by East German leader Erich Honecker, even though Honecker has taken a hardline resistance to the kind of reform Gorbachev is pressing in Moscow. All of East Germany's celebrations are being clouded by the recent flood of refugees to the west. In towns and cities across West Germany today, thousands of East German refugees are being welcomed to their new homes. Others are being processed at refugee camps, registering for jobs, Social Security, and relocation benefits. Another 600 refugees arrived in the west from Poland this morning. They had fled to the West German embassy in Warsaw. A fire in a nursing home in Norfolk, Virginia during the night left 9 people dead, and more than 60 other residents of the home are hospitalized this morning. Firefighters had to carry many of the patients to safety. The fire apparently broke out in one of the bedrooms. Some of the dead were found trapped in their smoke-filled rooms. Jim Bakker is still proclaiming his innocence despite his conviction yesterday on all 24 charges of fraud and conspiracy. Bakker is free on a $250,000 bond and is preparing to appeal the guilty verdict. That verdict came just over 10 hours of deliberation, with the jurors saying all the evidence pointed to Bakker bilking his followers. Now, some people making news this morning. Lawrence Welk has donated $35,000 to support a museum planned for the site of the Welk family farm outside Strasburg, North Dakota. He says he's honored by the idea of a Welk Museum. Geraldo Rivera is getting a role he was born to play. He's featured as himself in the next episode of 30-something. And Marlon Brando says movie studio executives weakened the anti-apartheid message in his new film, The Dry White Season. Brando talked with CBS correspondent Connie Chung.
Did not take into consideration the benefits that might befall people in Africa who are suffering terribly as a result of the policies of apartheid. I think they made a money decision.
Much more of the Brando conversation can be seen this weekend on the CBS News broadcast Saturday night with Connie Chung. That's the latest hearing, Kathleen.
Thanks, Faith.
Apparently, he told Connie that he likes being fat.
Really?
Well, we'll see. Tomorrow night,
find out,
10 o'clock Eastern time.
Mark is in Fort Lauderdale this morning. Mark, what are you up to?
Well, I'm at the Bahia Mar Marina, and this is a tunnel boat that you see behind me. I was with Scott Gilman of Gilman Racing yesterday, who is one of the finest racers on the circuit, and I asked him how he got started racing tunnel boats.
I started in Southern California about 3 years ago at a local race course, and we worked our way up for the last 3 years to run the IOGP events.
How fast does a boat like this go?
This boat will run up to 130 to 140 miles an hour down the straightaways.
Scott, as they say, let's rock and roll.
Very good driver. Thank you.
Thank God you're a great driver. And also, you're in the hunt for the championship for the International Outboard Grand Prix. How close are you to the top?
2 points from the championship. Billy Siebold's leading, 2 points in front of us, and there's about 3 other guys that we have to contend with this weekend.
Well, Scott, best of luck to you. Let me do a little weather, and thanks for saving my life yesterday. Let me say this morning's weather segment is sponsored by Maxwell House Coffee, always good to the last drop. And let's do a little racing boat through the weather. Look for clouds and a few showers across eastern New England while another sunny and warm day is on tap in the southwest. Here in Florida, boy, I'm in shorts. It's beautiful. Thunderstorms and rain will fall from central Texas into Kentucky. That's a quick look at the national forecast. Let's take a look at your weather.
Good morning. I'm News 7 meteorologist Todd Gross. Today, rain for the early part of the day, clearing later this afternoon and highs then approaching 70. Tonight will be mild. Tomorrow, though, it will turn a little cooler, about 60 degrees with partly sunny skies.
Scott Gilman, thank you so much for racing with me, or letting me race with you yesterday. Best of luck this weekend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. From sunny Florida back to a little chilly New York.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Thanks, Mark. 23 minutes before the hour. Next, baseball with Brent Musburger as the playoffs head into Game 3.
Baseball's League Championship Series headed to Game 3 with the Oakland A's leading Toronto 2-0 in the American League. The Cubs and the Giants tied now at a game apiece in the NLCS. Last night, the Cubs evened their series by beating the Giants 9-5, and what a first inning. And the Cubs' hero was first baseman Mark Grace. In the 6th inning, with bases loaded, Mark Grace doubled to drive in 3 runs.
2 runs are home. They're waving home the third man. It's 9-2 Chicago.
Now let's turn our attention to the American League. It's been all Oakland and a lot of Ricky Henderson. In the first 2 games, he has a record 6 stolen bases.
That was the time when he timed the delivery.
Brent Musburger of CBS Sports is covering the playoffs and the World Series for CBS Radio. He joins us now live from Toronto. Good morning, Brent.
Good morning, Kathleen. Good morning, Harry.
Ricky Henderson, I understand, is who you think is just the one to watch in these series.
Well, he has turned the American League Championship Series completely in favor of Oakland. In fact, Kathleen, the Toronto Blue Jays are now complaining, several of them at least, including catcher Ernie Witt, that Ricky has been showing them up on the base paths. By the way, he's been aggressively going into third base, and once he was stealing second base, and the last few feet, he just pulled up and walked in because there was not a play being made on him. But I think that the Blue Jays are a frustrated team. They don't know what to do with Ricky. Certainly, the one thing you can't do is walk him, and they've walked him, I think, about 4 times in the first 2 games.
Well, you think it's going to be a sweep up there in Toronto?
No, I really don't. Kathleen, it changes completely when you come to a city like this. This is a new stadium, nearly 50,000 on hand. I might say that I think it's the finest stadium that I've ever been in. The roof will be closed tonight. It's the only one in the world that operates on a track that's opening and closing, and the Blue Jays are 10-0 when it's closed. Rest assured it has been nailed shut for this game here tonight.
Let's turn to the NLCS and think about last night's game, if we can, with Mark Grace. You know, the Cubs really, they had some broad power, didn't they, across the board? They're not depending on one person or another.
You know, as a long-suffering Cub fan, Kathleen, I was pleased that they were not blown away. Those of us who have lived in Chicago and followed the fortunes of the Cubs, after the first game, I think that we were expecting the worst. But the one thing is, Wrigley Field really presents entertaining games, and you can get the long ball out of somebody like Mark Grace in a ballpark like that. And I think that series is going to go 6 or 7 games.
Was the key last night that the fact that the Cubs held Will Clark to 1 for 4?
I think the key, Kathleen, is always your pitching, and unfortunately for Rick Russell, he just was unable to stop the Cubs in the early part of the game. You know, you can talk about baseball all you want, but it really comes down to what does your pitching do in the next game, and that'll be the same thing for Toronto tonight. They're going to try the left-hander Jimmy Key, and if he doesn't have it and he struggles with Ricky Henderson, then the A's will go up 3-0.
Now, tell me about playing in Candlestick Park. Does that favor one team or the other?
No, it does a disservice to both teams, I might add. That stadium should have been done away with a long time ago. I don't have to remind people out in the San Francisco Bay Area. They're going to vote out there soon, and there's a possibility that they're going to have a baseball stadium in downtown San Francisco. When I was out there, you could tell from the newspapers that it's going to be a close vote, and they might not get the bond issue through. It's a miserable place to play baseball, at best. Usually you go out for batting practice, and it's glorious for like about an hour, and then suddenly the wind picks up. But the Giants have done an excellent job, I think, of taking advantage of it this year. They've worked against other people's minds with it, and I think that the Cubs will have to overcome it mentally, or they could be in for a tough weekend.
Yeah, but if the Giants lose the series, they may get a new stadium.
That's exactly right.
Brent Musburger, thank you so much. We'll be listening to you tonight in Toronto, calling the Toronto A's game. Thank you.
Thanks, Kathleen. Have a nice day.
It's now 16 before the hour. Harry?
Coming up next, the changing sound of Julian Lennon. You're the One, the latest from pop star Julian Lennon. He has returned from a 3-year layoff with a new album called Mr. Jordan. Those years have seen some changes in his music, and our music editor Mark McEwen joins us from Fort Lauderdale with a story. Mark?
Thank you, Harry. Well, Julian Lennon is the son of John Lennon, of course, but he's also a successful recording artist in his own right. He's learned a lot about the business in a very short time. He's also learned it's not easy being the son of a Beatle.
They first started saying, well, yes, he sounds like his dad, which I didn't mind, you know, I kind of expected it. But then when they started saying, well, he sounds like his dad on purpose, then that became rather a catch-22 situation. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
Ever since you've been leaving me,
Julian Lennon's first album, Velat, went platinum and produced 2 hits, including the top 5 single, Too Late for Goodbyes.
But it's much too late for goodbye.
On the strength of that success, his record company pushed him to quickly release a second album, which wasn't well received.
Once something successful has gone down, there is a rush to try and keep that momentum going as quickly as possible. I just didn't feel I had a chance to do what I really wanted to do on it, and therefore didn't quite like it as much as I could have. And I think that was due to decisions that were made that were beyond my control.
After a recording hiatus, Lennon returned this year with his third album, Mr. Jordan. Not only was this a more mature Julian Lennon musically, but it was also an artist now in control of his career.
The past 3 years I went away and basically sat down away from everybody else and just slowly but surely found out how it all works and got in control, so to speak, and became the sort of yes-no man which oversaw everything to do with the career.
Julian Lennon has lived most of his life in the spotlight. He says it hasn't always been fun and games.
I didn't quite know what it was all about at such an early age, and it really became difficult more than a pleasure later on, because when I went to schools, for the first year that I was in the school, the headmaster said, well, this year we'd like to introduce a new member of the school, and made me stand up in front of the whole school and said, this is John Lennon's son, Julian. Please treat him as fairly as you would anybody else. And I went, oh, no.
Julian, we hear so much about your father. What's your mom think about your career?
She's very proud of me. Obviously, she keeps an eye out for me and says, well, you know, be careful. You know, it's a little tough out there. And I say, yeah, Mum, I know. But I still go through the pitfalls, and then Mum goes, I told you so. I don't really care about what they say anymore. I just believe that I've got to be true to myself and do what I feel is right and what comes naturally, and that's the way I will continue to go.
You know, a lot of people think it's real easy being the son of a legend. Think of Frank Sinatra Jr., just that name alone, what that did for him. Julian Lennon, though, is battling being the son of John Lennon. I think he's come a long way, and so he's very young. A lot of empty highway ahead of him. We'll see how he does in the future. Harry?
Thanks very much, Mark. It's 9 minutes before the hour. Next, Dr. Bob Arnott on how little it takes to keep your blood pressure under control.
Is it known that the opposition leader Andara is okay at this moment? Do we know where he is?
It's my understanding that he is okay, that he had been taken into custody, but under diplomatic pressure has now been released. It's my understanding that for the time being, Andara is now okay. Yes.
Thank you, Scott. Scott Wallace in Panama City. This morning, the White House is strongly denying charges that it mishandled the attempted coup in Panama. Presidential spokesman Marlon Fitzwater told Chief White House correspondent Leslie Stahl that it isn't true the rebels asked the United States to take custody of Noriega. In fact, Fitzwater says the rebels flatly rejected any possibility that Noriega might be turned over to American forces. Fitzwater also denies reports that there is a major White House policy review on Panama. He says Chief of Staff John Sununu is conducting a routine study of how the situation was handled. 2 Swiss medical technicians were kidnapped this morning in Lebanon. That happened outside a Red Cross medical center in Sidon. The technicians were working for the Red Cross. They were abducted at gunpoint and taken toward a Palestinian refugee camp. No one has admitted responsibility for the kidnapping. Soviet President Gorbachev is in East Germany. He arrived this morning to help celebrate the 40th anniversary of the communist government there. Gorbachev is expected to voice support in public for the East German leader Erich Honecker. But diplomats say Gorbachev may have some tough talk in private, telling Honecker to stop resisting democratic reforms. East German refugees arriving in West Germany are getting warm welcomes. 7,600 refugees came in by train after pushing their way into the West German embassy in Czechoslovakia. At relocation camps now, they are lining up to register for jobs and benefits and to call relatives they left behind in East Germany. The future of freedom and communism in Hungary is being debated this morning. Anthony Mason has that story from Budapest.
Faced with the first free elections in more than 40 years, Hungary's ruling Communist Party is attempting a chameleon-like transformation. As nearly 1,300 delegates gathered for a special party congress in Budapest this morning, reformers were calling for the party to change its name, change its platform, and convert to Western-style socialism. Without that radical transformation, reformist leaders believe the party can hope for no more than 15% of the vote in the parliamentary elections, which must be held by next June. The last of the Stalinist hardliners have vowed to resist. But the party must reform itself, says parliamentary leader Matya Suros. Those members who do not accept this may leave. An open split would seriously cripple the party, but opposition leaders say even a facelift cannot save it. They can change whatever they like, one said, but to us, it's still the same old Communist Party. Anthony Mason, CBS News, Budapest.
A fire in a nursing home in Norfolk, Virginia, killed 9 people and left scores injured overnight. Some of the dead were found trapped in smoke-filled rooms, but firefighters managed to rescue more than 100 residents using ladders to carry some patients to safety. More than 60 of the nursing home residents remain hospitalized this morning. Jim Bakker is vowing to fight on, and his lawyers say they will appeal his conviction for fraud and conspiracy. Erin Hayes reports.
It took jurors less than 11 hours to decide Jim Bakker was guilty on all 24 counts against him. Even so, the jury had moved haltingly, stopping several times to ask for a better understanding of the laws involved, to see pieces of evidence a second time. But in the end, said they all agreed on one thing. He was guilty. Afterwards, Jim Bakker insisted the jury was wrong.
I went into the courtroom innocent of the charges against me, and I come out today still innocent of the charges against me.
Tammy Bakker addressed reporters with a gospel song.
On Christ, the solid rock I stand.
Several of the Bakker supporters indicated they were prepared for a guilty verdict, that it has not shaken their faith in Jim Bakker.
There's nothing wrong with Jim Bakker. He's got God. He doesn't need any man on this earth.
Prosecutors said the verdict proved one thing.
However slow and cumbersome, the legal system works.
Jim Bakker is out now on a $250,000 bond until his sentencing. The maximum penalty he could receive, 120 years in prison.
I would say I feel sad but encouraged in God.
Erin Hayes, CBS News, Charlotte, North Carolina.
Some of the items in our daybook this Friday, the 6th of October. Senate Democrats and Republicans will try to negotiate a bill to cut the budget deficit. President Bush will have a cyst removed from the middle finger of his right hand this afternoon. His doctors say it's a minor operation to be done under local anesthesia with Mr. Bush staying awake. And the Toronto Blue Jays try to battle back tonight in Game 3 of the American League playoffs. They trail the Oakland Athletics 2-0. Officials of the American Rocket Company say they will try again, despite yesterday's failure of their first commercial launch. A stuck valve prevented the 16-ton rocket from developing enough thrust, so it never got off the pad at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Billowing flames destroyed the rocket and its payload. AMROC plans another launch attempt next year. So it's back to the old drawing board. Harry and Kathleen?
Yeah, and then some. Thanks, Charlie.
Mark McEwen this morning is in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, wearing the worst shirt that I have ever seen. Mark, we've got...
it is not, Kathleen. You got to
Let me see the socks. I hear the socks are a real joy. Let me see the socks.
The socks? It's the legs that are a real joy. Kathleen, this is a genuine Hawaiian shirt, bought from Hawaii. I'm here with Tom Stickle, who is the crew chief of the Bud Light team. We talked to Scott Gilliam earlier. Scott's in second place. You guys are in first place. What does a crew chief do?
Well, Mark, the big job is to have the boats ready to go in the water, have them fueled up, propellers on, and the crew standing by to hold the boats for the start. You got to have the boats there before you can win the race.
Now, we see the boat behind us. What kind of engine do you have on a boat this size?
It's a 2-liter Mercury.
And what sort of gas do you use, and what kind of gas mileage do you get?
We use aviation gas in it, and mileage we'll use 20 gallons in a 35-minute race.
And also, how did you become a crew chief for boat racing?
I used to race myself years ago, and I just stayed involved in it. I went to officiating, and then Billy and I were good friends, and he asked me to be on the crew, and been doing it for 8, 9 years now.
Well, you guys are in first place this weekend. Will that change how you race?
No, we got to win.
All right. Thanks for being with us. Don't go away. There's a boat behind me right here. Let me do a little bit of weather in a nice shirt. Thank you very much. Take a look at the map. Talk about it. New England, they're going to see a little bit of showers. Another sunny and warm day is on tap in the southeast and Florida. Thunderstorms and rain will fall from central Texas northeast to Kentucky, while chilly temperatures will be felt in the upper Midwest. Out west, a mostly sunny day is on tap with the exception of clouds over sections of Wyoming and Montana. Down here, we are in shorts, and it's sweating, and it's a wonderful day. I'm sweating. That's a quick look at the national forecast. Let's take a look at your weather.
Good morning. I'm News 7 meteorologist Todd Gross. Today, rain for the early part of the day. Clearing later this afternoon and highs then approaching 70. Tonight will be mild. Tomorrow, though, it will turn a little cooler, about 60 degrees with partly sunny skies.
Tom, I want to thank you for being with us, and best of luck in the race this weekend.
Well, thank you, Mark. We need all the luck we can get.
All right, from Hawaiian shirts and shorts, now back to Harry in a suit.
Thanks very much, Mark. The story of Jim Bakker has cast a shadow over television ministries. With us this morning are two of the most prominent men in the world of religious television. In a moment, Pat Robertson. But first, the Reverend Robert Schuller. His weekly Hour of Power has more than 1.5 million viewers. He's been silent on the PTL scandal since it first broke. But this morning, Robert Schuller joins us from Washington. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Harry.
Why have you been silent until now?
I don't think it's proper to interfere when the process of investigation is being handled professionally. I believe a person is innocent until proven guilty, and I should restrain myself until the entire case has been aired in court and a verdict is handed down by a responsible jury.
That has been done now.
Yes.
What do you think this means?
Well, I think it means that independent ministries who are not aligned to mainline denominations that have long-standing systems and procedures of accountability stand in a very vulnerable position. The vulnerability is, can you trust them?
For a viewer, for someone who is looking for God on television, how does that viewer know to choose between a Jim Bakker and a Robert Schuller or an Oral Roberts or a Pat Robertson, or everyone is free to operate on the airwaves?
Well, it's difficult for me to honestly answer that question because the honest answer is that I do have great confidence and trust in the mainline historic Protestant denominations like the Presbyterians and the Methodists and the Episcopalians, the Roman Catholic Church, and my own denomination, the oldest in America, the Reformed Church in America. But it's only the last 40 years there's been a rash of independent ministries, a mom and pop, 5 persons, a state corporation, and no system of responsibility to hire judicatories. But I do believe today, Harry, that there's been a tremendous shaking out that's happened already. We've noticed that our market share has gone up. I'm currently crossing the country visiting bookstores because that's what I'm doing today here in Washington. And there's been a level of trust that I find coming my way that is personally very affirming. And I would hope that Americans will learn that we have to have the courage to trust again. You know, no individual, no institution, no culture, no society can enjoy emotional health if they do not dare to trust.
Reverend Schuller, we thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Harry.
Do appreciate it. Pat Robertson gave up his ministry to run for president last year, but he remains the host of the Christian Broadcasting Network 700 Club. And Pat Robertson is with us from Virginia Beach, Virginia. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
As we look at the Jim Bakker case, and maybe from some distance where you are, did you see him as a man of God who was corrupted, or a corrupt man who found a rather devious means of getting in people's pockets?
Harry, a long time ago, we were looking at a couple of kids, really, who were rather emotionally immature and just a little bit out of touch with reality. So what happened over the last 20 years or so was just an enlargement of a tendency that existed while he was still quite young, I think.
Is there something, this is a question that gets asked of people in the news business or anybody who appears on television. Is there something inherently wrong with the medium or with the notion of trying to use the airwaves and television as a means to win souls?
Well, I don't think there's anything in the world wrong with it, but a person has to have integrity. That's what we've stressed. There are three things I stress at CBN is innovation, integrity, and excellence. And I hammer those things away at the people who work here, is that every utterance, every speech has to be with integrity. I've made mistakes on the air because I do a news broadcast too, and of quoting certain things, and I've come back and apologized or said I was in error. I mean, we have to be honest. And if you're not, as a human being, it has nothing to do with television, I don't think. It has to do with your own character.
Jim Bakker is facing a very, very serious potential sentence here, $5 million fine, 120 years in jail. Do you think somebody like Jim Bakker should go to jail?
Well, that's not for me to say. Thank goodness I'm not the judge in the case, but they do call that judge Maximum Bob, and I dare say that if I were going to estimate, I would say that he's going to give him 25 to 40 years, and that is a very, very stiff sentence. I'm grieved about the whole process, and I'm sorry this happened, but I'm also very sorry for the people whose faith were damaged by this a man who was just, as I say, spiritually immature and quite self-centered. It's too bad. It's a chapter of Christian history that I think we need to turn the page on and get on with something more positive.
Pat Robertson, thanks so much for chatting with us this morning.
Thank you.
It. 16 minutes past the hour. Kathleen?
Coming up next, Dionne Warwick and a march for the homeless. A new study of 26 American communities has found that homelessness is increasing in all areas of the country and that families are a growing factor of homeless people. To bring national attention to the problem, a group called Housing Now is sponsoring a march in Washington, D.C. tomorrow, and Dionne Warwick will be one of the marchers. She joins us this morning from Washington, along with the Special Projects Director of Housing Now, Carol Fennelly. Good morning to both of you. Good morning, Carol, Dionne.
Good morning. Good morning, Kathleen.
Dionne, I just found out that you are called a U.S. Ambassador of Health. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct.
So tell me how you feel. What is the biggest issue with homelessness? Is it that these people aren't provided enough medical care?
Well, that along with the fact that there's no shelter for them. Obviously, the health issue is a major part of it, along with not having correct housing and clothing and food. Presents a tremendous medical problem.
You know, Carol, I have something here from the conservative think tank, the Heritage Foundation, which I'm sure you're familiar with in Washington, D.C., that says that housing is not the problem with the homeless, but that they are disabled by severe mental illness.
There is, you know, a small number of people who are homeless as a result of their mental illness. The fastest growing group among the homeless population are families with children. And in fact, in Washington, D.C., requests for services from homeless families has increased by 500% in 1 year alone. Soon the average homeless person will be a child. So that stereotype of the mentally ill homeless person or the alcoholic single male just no longer holds.
Dionne, what is the best way to take care of the homeless?
Cover them. I mean, literally, put them into situations where they can afford it first, provide realistic job situations where they can afford to maintain it, give them medical aid, food, education, all those things that go along with just being normal.
Is it a matter of dignity, Dionne?
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think we have to also raise the conscience of the rest of the United States in that effort to continue the dignity of these people. These people, and you will find that a majority of them are well-heeled, well-educated, and who have just been forced into this unnecessary economical position.
Carol, I understand that the purpose of this march specifically is to decry the housing situation. How bad do you see it in the past? Let's say from the beginning of the Reagan administration in 1980. How is the housing situation different then than it is today?
Well, over the last 8 years, 75 to 80%, depending upon whose figures you use, of the housing budget has been decreased or cut. And when you take that much out of any budget, you are bound to see dramatic and devastating effects, which is what we're seeing right now. It's estimated that by the year 2003, if current housing trends continue, there'll be 18.7 million homeless people in our country. That cuts into far beyond the poor person. We're getting into the middle class when we start talking about that many homeless people. Every homeless person, no matter how they ended up on the streets, whether it was through mental illness, economic devastation, whatever, every homeless person has in common the lack of affordable housing that is available to them. And it doesn't matter how they got there, they don't lack housing now, and there's simply not the funds available to create that housing through the housing budget. The funds are there, but Congress has voted them out. The Reagan administration took them out, and our call right now is to Congress to put that money back.
Dionne, I also understand that the Hollywood personalities who are going to be involved in the march tomorrow are actually going to march behind 500 homeless people.
That's right.
Very significant. Dionne Warwick, Carol Fennelly, thank you so much, both of you, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's now 22 after.
Welcome back to CBS This Morning. I'm Harry Smith.
And I'm Kathleen Sullivan.
There are not many businesses more fickle than fashion. That applies to the looks that come and go and to the designers who create them. But Scaasi has been at the top of that changing world for lots of years now.
He does have a first name.
Arnold.
Arnold Scaasi, but he says, call me Scaasi. From Sophia Loren to Elizabeth Taylor, some of the world's most stylish women have been wearing Scaasi. But most of us really got to know him when Barbara Bush wore that stunning blue velvet gown at the inaugural ball. And now it's for sale at your local stores. This half hour we're going to be at home with Arnold Scaasi. Now the news. Here's Faith Daniels. Faith.
Kathleen, Panama's General Manuel Noriega is cracking down on his political opponents in the wake of Tuesday's failed coup. Plainclothes police with guns and rubber truncheons took over the street. Opposition leader Guillermo Endara was trapped inside his headquarters. There was scattered gunfire, and reporters were hustled away before troops moved in. But Endara escaped and is now reported in hiding. The White House tells CBS News this morning it is not true that it mishandled the attempted coup in Panama. Today's New York Times quotes White House sources as saying Chief of Staff John Sununu ordered a review of how the situation was handled. The presidential spokesman, Marlin Fitzwater, tells Chief White House correspondent Leslie Stahl that does not mean a major review of U.S. policy. Fitzwater calls it a routine look at procedures. He also says it is not true the rebels asked the U.S. to take custody of Noriega. Instead, Fitzwater says the rebels rejected any suggestion that they might hand over Noriega. Soviet President Gorbachev arrived in East Germany today for the official celebrations of the 40th anniversary of communist rule there. He was greeted by East German leader Erich Honecker, a communist hardliner. There are reports that Gorbachev may privately urge Honecker to allow greater freedom for the people of East Germany. For all the people who've just fled the lack of freedom in East Germany, there are warm welcomes and help today from the people of West Germany. Resettlement camps are providing temporary shelter as the refugees register for jobs and government benefits. 7,600 arrived from Prague yesterday and more than 600 from Warsaw today. That pushes the total for the past few weeks to well over 40,000. 9 people have been killed in a nursing home fire in Norfolk, Virginia. More than 60 of the home's residents were injured. Firefighters used ladders to carry some of the bedridden patients to safety, while anxious relatives waited outside. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Jim Bakker's lawyers are preparing an appeal of Bakker's conviction on fraud and conspiracy charges. Bakker's free on a $250,000 bond. He says the guilty verdict has not shaken his faith in God. Earlier on CBS This Morning, the jury foreman told Kathleen there was no excuse for what Bakker, the minister, did to his followers.
I reckon it sends out a message to that I don't care who you are, you can not fraud people, even you cannot stand behind religion to fraud people.
Bakker Will be sentenced on October 24th. He faces 120 years in jail and up to $5 million in fines. The Labor Department is out this morning with its first look at how the economy fared in September. It shows that unemployment among civilian workers was 5.3%. That's up 0.1% from the August jobless rate. Well, cartoon characters are used to getting a pie in the face, but in Paris, Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck were run off stage by French protesters hurling eggs and flour. Police armed with clubs came to the rescue, charging into the protesters. The demonstrators say the Disney theme park, under construction just outside Paris, is an invasion of American culture. And if that's not un-American enough, they also passed out leaflets protesting the airing of the Dallas TV show on French television. Harry and Kathleen, what next?
Thanks very much, Faith. Eisner up there getting pelted. I suppose I should laugh at that if I thought that was kind of funny.
I don't think anyone has ever thrown tomatoes at Mickey Mouse.
Well, who knows?
That is...
We'll find out that Mickey Mouse probably has French roots and it'll be okay.
Here's Mark McEwen, who's down in Fort Lauderdale this morning.
Good morning, Kathleen. Should be a federal offense throwing something at Mickey Mouse. We showed you the pure tunnel boats earlier. We're going to show you some variations on a theme. Rusty Campbell, the driver for the Bell South Summerford team, is part of the Mod VP racing class. What is that class, Rusty?
Mark, my class, half tunnel boat, half V-bottom, required by the rules to be a fiberglass construction and offered to the public in a ski boat version.
How fast does it go?
In between 100 and 108 miles an hour.
All right, now we have someone else here, Mike Trotter, who's part of the Bahia Mar racing team. You're in the FST 140 class. What makes your class different?
My class is a 16-foot tunnel boat, Kevlar constructed. It's a stock 200 motor with a 142 cubic inch Mercury.
How fast?
About a 120, 125.
I love these slow boats out here. Chuck McKay is in the Champo class from Coon Rapids Chrysler Plymouth racing team out of Minneapolis. What makes your boat different?
Well, we're the Formula One class of powerboat racing. We run 130, 140 mile an hour on the straightaways.
All right. Well, what we're going to do while we're doing the weather, we're going to get together for a Le Mans Star. Gentlemen, get your boats ready. You guys are going to love this. Take a look at the map. This is for tomorrow. Clearing skies will develop in the northeast, while showers and thunderstorms will develop along the southeast and Gulf Coast along a cold front. A chilly start to the weekend will be felt in the Great Lakes region. Clouds and a few showers will cross the central plains, while mostly sunny and pleasantly warm weather will be the rule for the western third of the nation. That's a quick look at the national forecast. Let's take a look at your weather.
Good morning. I'm News 7 meteorologist Todd Gross. The rain has ended. At this point, we'll have variable amounts of clouds and sunshine today, maybe just a leftover sprinkle this morning. Temperatures up to 70 later, but colder over the weekend.
Got to thank the IOGP, the Swimmers Hall of Fame, WCIX in Miami, WPEC in West Palm Beach, and the Bahia Mar Marina. All right, let me have that flag right there. Gentlemen, start your engine! Is this a great world or what? Back to New York. How about that? How about that, Kathleen?
I thought the checkered flag was for the end of the race.
Technicalities, Kathleen. Technicalities.
Thanks, Mark.
Bye, McEwen. Have a good weekend.
Okay, bye-bye.
It's now 24 minutes before the hour. Coming up next, we're spending our Friday at home with Arnold Scaasi.
This morning's At Home With segment is sponsored by Triple Protection Aquafresh. More than cavity protection, triple protection.
Every Friday, we visit At Home With someone special. Today, we spend some time with a man whose eye for beautiful clothes has kept him on the cutting edge of fashion for 3 decades. Name a famous woman, including First Lady Barbara Bush, and chances are she has at least one dress in her closet created by this man. This morning, we are at home with designer Scaasi. He got the name Scaasi by spelling Isaac's, his family name, backwards. And this fall's collection was the 42nd under the Scaasi label. As always, the dresses were sumptuous, elegant, and made from gorgeous fabrics. A version of his Barbara Blues satin and velvet ball gown got national exposure last January when the First Lady chose it for the inauguration night parties. 30 years ago, it was Sophia Loren who took a shine to a black brocade Scaasi as well as a fabulous chinchilla coat. In 1961, Joan Crawford and Dina Merrill posed in Scaasi gowns. Natalie Wood called her Scaasi the sexiest dress in the world. Brooke Astor has been a Scaasi girl, so has Helen Gurley Brown, Felicia Rashad, and Elizabeth Taylor. And glamorous women from all over have been delighted to join his Me and My Scaasi advertising campaign. Home for Arnold Scaasi is this renovated summer retreat on eastern Long Island, and that is where I spoke with Scaasi recently. Good morning.
Good morning.
That is a spectacular room you are sitting there, and you're surrounded by some really stunning contemporary art. When did you start collecting?
About 25 years ago.
My goodness. Can you tell us about the screen that's over your right shoulder there?
Well, that's quite new. That's the Hockney screen. I found it in London. Hockney is not a favorite artist of mine, so I was very surprised when I jumped into the shop and saw it and said, I'd like to have that screen, and who did it? And they said, David Hockney. I was very surprised, but anyway, I got the screen and I love it.
You collect almost exclusively contemporary art, and why?
20th century art, yes.
How come?
I don't know. It's just sort of what I like. It's what appeals to me. I like the colors of it. I like the shapes. And I'm very interested in 20th century art.
Tell me about the painting that's over the fireplace.
That's a Paul Jenkins. It's the first abstract painting I ever bought. I bought it in 1964, and I didn't like abstract art at the time, and I really felt it was not attractive. And then suddenly there was an exhibit of Paul Jenkins at the Guggenheim Museum. I saw the painting and fell in love with it, and became a devotee of abstract art ever since.
Tell me about the furniture in your house, because it doesn't look like anything you can get any place.
All the banquettes are built in, and I designed them for the house, because the space is so, you know, the space is not enormous, even though it's spread out, and I wanted everyone to be able to sit and see the wonderful view outside. So I designed all the banquettes to go around, and then I had to design something to go with the banquettes, so I designed the ottomans and the chairs that you see behind me. And that's really how we got it all done.
What does your house mean to you, the house that you have there in the country? What do you like to use it for?
Well, it's a wonderful retreat for me. I don't think you can work 18 hours a day in New York almost every day and then not have a place to go to, because, you know, Manhattan is a very tough city to work in. So this is my retreat. I drive out here. It takes me about an hour and 45 minutes, and I'm in another world. I come here every minute I can come. I'm here.
Does it recharge your batteries to get out there?
Well, it gives me another perspective. You know, I'm suddenly looking at another world, and it makes me realize. It relaxes me. I guess that's the only word I can use.
There is a Louise Nevelson that we want to see that is over on the other side of the room.
Yeah, I love it. Louise was a great friend of mine, and she built this sculpture really for this wall over here, and I think it's really quite spectacular. I love it. I love all her work. There's something very mysterious about it, you know, and she was a very extraordinary woman, and I just loved working with her.
If you don't mind, take us into the dining room, because it's a great departure from what we have seen so far.
Thank you. I love it. It's fun. When I first started to decorate the house, I realized that I needed to use very bright colors. So, as you see in this room, the wallpaper is overscaled, but then the room is overscaled. It's a room I can seat 40 people in for dinner, or close it up as I've done, and seat 6 or 4.
Do you like to entertain?
I love to entertain, but I'd like to be entertained more, I think.
So is that how you pick who comes to dinner, is if they entertain you?
Well, as I said, I come out here as a retreat, so when I do have guests, they're people I really like and really want to entertain.
And tables and settings and tables, I know is important to you.
Well, I have this sort of theory in decorating that there are 3 rooms probably that you don't have to be in for more than 45 minutes, if that long. One is the dining room, so it could be a kind of fantasy room. You don't have to really sit and worry about what it looks like. You just want to be in a sort of another time. I love place settings, and I collect them. And I collect plates. I'm always coming home from Europe or somewhere with a bundle of plates under my arm. I found these, which I think are wonderful. They're reproductions of Canaletto paintings, and I found them one day in Venice in a souvenir shop. So I think that's sort of fun. And I love doing table settings and making it kind of a fantasy thing when you come to dinner. I don't think it should look like any other place you go to.
It certainly.
And this is my favorite. This is one of my favorite sculptures. You know, it's a du buffet, and I love the shape of it again and the colors, and it's very contemporary. And I think he was one of the great painters, obviously.
We are at home with Scaasi, and we will return in just a couple of minutes. We are at home with Scaasi this morning, out in the hallway. I understand you have a sort of a theory about parts of the house like this.
Well, the hallway, again, I think you just come through it for a second, so it can be really fantastic and even a little weird, I don't know. But I love the red of this hall with the yellow doors and all of the, just the sort of fantasy of it, because you just really pass through it. So you can be in it for a very short time, and then you're out of it.
Let's go on, head on into the sitting room, because I've got an awful lot of questions that...
Oh, okay. Well, we're going now into the upstairs sitting room. And here we are. It's painted in this blue because it gives me the feeling of the outdoors. The water is just beyond it. So you see the outdoors, and so the shade of blue in this room is sort of very difficult to obtain, but we did it feeling it would bring the outdoors in.
I want to ask you some questions about what you do. When did you know you had to be a designer?
Oh, God, so many years ago. I think about 35 years ago, I guess, when I was really a teenager, and I had always been surrounded by beautiful women and wonderful clothes that they wore, and it was a kind of passion of mine, and it just happened. You know, you sort of know your destiny, and you don't veer away from it. And here I am.
Was there ever a time when you questioned, when you thought, I really should have done something else? Did you always feel that this was your...
I've always felt I wanted to do this, though there are times when friends of mine have said I should really be running General Motors or conducting something absolutely opposite, but I always go back to it, and I feel it's really my strength, and I love it. I have a great time doing it. So even if I do work long hours or do a lot of different things, I find it exciting and very, very rewarding.
Your most famous client these days must be Barbara Bush, and you, of course, designed the gown she wore for the inauguration. When you have a client like that, what do you feel you have to do? What ideas have to come together there?
Well, I want every client, not only Barbara Bush, but every client that I have to look wonderful, to look pretty. I do pretty clothes, and I like to make women look pretty. So we just do the same thing with Barbara Bush. We don't change. I mean, she comes in, she chooses her clothes. We fit them, I think, very, very well. And we have a wonderful rapport. You must have a very good rapport with a client, or it doesn't work, you know?
She strikes me, though, as a person who I think is concerned about her appearance, but it doesn't occur to me that fashion necessarily is on the top of her list of priorities.
You're absolutely right. It's not the first thing in her mind. She likes to look good. She's a wonderfully intelligent, amusing woman. You know, she has a great sense of humor, so it's very easy to work with her. And she likes pretty clothes. She wants to look pretty, and she wants to look good. But then I think once she's dressed in the morning, that's it, and she goes off and does all the great works that she does through her life and through her day. And she's finished with it.
Do you have your list of famous clients is enormous. Do you have a woman that has been the favorite that you've put a dress on?
No, I think every woman I dress suddenly becomes the favorite at that moment. But I mean, I love dressing all the celebrities, Diane Carroll, Mary Tyler Moore, Elizabeth Taylor. It's fun to dress them because you see your clothes in the public eye, and it's exciting. But then there are just wonderful women who come from New Jersey or, I don't know, other places, from Texas and California, and it's just as exciting to dress them because I like making clothes, so it doesn't matter.
It's such a rarefied world, though, in which you live, because these dresses cost an enormous amount of money.
Not always. Sometimes they're less expensive. It depends the dress you pick.
But a dress, for instance, like Elizabeth Taylor, like the one in the picture there that's right to your right.
Yes, it's the dress we did for when she won the film award at Lincoln Center.
My goodness. Do you think what you do is important?
I think it's important to the people I do it for, and it's very important for me. And I think if I could make the world look a little prettier and a little more attractive, I think that's pretty good.
Scaasi, thank you so much for inviting us into your home. It has been an interesting adventure for me, an outside observer in your world. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
On CBS This Morning, here's a look at your weather. It will be sunny over the western third of the nation, except for some clouds over the northern Rockies. Elsewhere, sunny but chilly conditions will spread over the upper Midwest, while rain and thunderstorms will develop from eastern Oklahoma to Kentucky. Some clouds and a few showers will dot the Northeast.
Next week on CBS This Morning, Stuart Copeland, you know, the drummer from The Police. Also does a lot of movie music. He wrote the theme from The Equalizer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It's an opera. We're going to talk about his opera next week. Also joining us next week, Tom Selleck.
Just kind of Tom Selleck. Just Tom Selleck. Jane Fonda. Jane Fonda. By the way, tomorrow night, Connie Chung is going to be talking at 10 o'clock Eastern Time. A very, very rare interview with Marlon Brando, so we hope you join Saturday night with Connie Chung.
Have yourself a great weekend. We're going to leave you with another look at Fort Lauderdale, and we'll see you on Monday.
Bye-bye.